Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our side event on the workforce for the future, international skills partnerships for the green and just transition. This side event has been co-organized by IOM, Enabel, IOE, the World Bank, OECD, and LAMP, and is sponsored by the governments of Australia and Belgium. We really thank all of them for the great support. To begin, I will hand over to Monica Gorachi. Monica is the IOM head of the director of the Department of Program Supports and Migration Management. So Monica, thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Fabio. And you already said everything I wanted to say, to recognize and thank Enabel and all the partners and our sponsors, Belgium and Australia. I'm here on behalf of our Deputy Director General, Ugochi Daniels, who was held up in another meeting and unfortunately couldn't come, but she asked me to join to testify the importance that this topic has for the organization in a world where climate change is having increasingly adverse impacts, especially on the most vulnerable. The need for new solutions and sustainable resilience building is greater than ever, and this is reflected in our strategic plan 2024-28, which was launched a couple of weeks ago, and also in our global appeal, which we launched yesterday, where this area is an area of focus and where we want to work with partners to address this and to successfully drive the transition to a greener economy and society. We need to invest in skills. And as more and more industries undergo greening processes, there is growing demand for workers with green skills. So in line with IOM's institutional strategy on migration, environment, and climate change to provide solutions for people on the move, for people to move, and for people to stay, IOM has already experience in providing skills training for migrant workers in the context of green transition, with almost 10 programs that we're running around the world. Training in green skills can directly increase the resilience of vulnerable populations, as in the case of Somalia, for instance. Here, IOM provided technical training for youth in the light of increasing periods of droughts as an effect of climate change. A similar project is ongoing in Chad, whereas IOM's technical and vocational education training empowers women to learn new skills, such as the maintenance of solar panels, and to diversify their income and prepare for the future. IOM is also active in using international skills partnerships to create the workforce for the future. Venezuelan migrant workers are trained extensively to fill labor gaps in the Brazilian green energy sector, after which the workers are also able to utilize the skills and experience back in their community of origin upon return. And similarly, in South Sudan, young women are trained to become electrical engineers in the light of providing communities with green energy. And this year, we will be starting to implement skills mobility partnerships in different regions around the world. By enhancing capacity of key stakeholders, we can contribute to address labor and skills shortages in critical sectors for them to advance to green transition. And these projects showcase really the potential of labor migration to create the workforce for the future in a green and just transition where no one is left behind. So in this webinar, a dynamic group of experts and stakeholders from international organizations, government agencies, and practitioners will expand on the potential of labor migration for the green transition and the lessons learned from the field. And the impressive list of organizers of this side event that Fabio mentioned shows really the global interest on this topic and highlights its urgency. So as two of the main outcomes of this side event, we expect that all these partners can strengthen their collaboration in setting up international skills partnerships that truly respond to labor market needs, while at the same time Participants exchange relevant information on innovative solutions and best practices. So I therefore thank all the speakers and all of you who agreed to participate and share your time with us, and look forward to hearing about the results of the discussion. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay for the whole time, but my colleagues will brief me and the DDG. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monica, for joining and providing these opening remarks. Now we will start with the session. We also want to welcome people joining online. We will have more than 100 people probably participating online. So we will move now to the content. So next slide is basically an introduction about the topic of this important session. Just to add to what Monica said, that actually today we published a very interesting paper on labor migration and climate mobility as an adaptation strategy. So you can see a copy of this paper in the entrance of the room, but obviously we can send you also the electronic version. So as Monica was saying, the transition to a low carbon emissions economy is a global task of unprecedented scale and speed. It's still in its early stages. Few countries' plans for attaining net zero carbon emissions incorporate skills in sufficient depth. Very few have begun to consider the potential of or the need for green skilled labor mobility. The green transition presents both opportunities but also challenges. In terms of the challenges, probably we are seeing some in the screen. One of the most important is the need for green skills in many different sectors and occupations. It's not just only in those sectors related to the green transition. We can see in the next figure, in the next slide, that the need for green skills is growing across basically the whole economy, media, non-profit, finance, everywhere. Every sector, every industry needs workers with the green transition. And also, another important challenge is that the availability of green workers is not evenly present in everywhere. We see a little gap among countries and among regions, and you can see here in the next slide the difference between, for example, countries such as Germany compared to the rest of the European Union or US or UK, let alone the global South, that probably faces more challenges to have these people trained. And finally, we are also seeing the need for more green skills training and education. As Monica was saying, we have the partners that we are organizing this event. We have different tools and frameworks that can help to develop these green skills. Just to give you an example, just to conclude this introduction, according to BCG estimates report, we will face a very important skills gap by the 2030. This is 6 years from now. It's 6 years. It's not even a decade. We will have a 7 million gap persons with the right skills in the clean energy industries, being solar the most important contributor to this. So this is the challenge that we have, but we also have some opportunities, and this side event is probably a good testimony of this. We all have this opportunity, governments, private sector, international organizations, diaspora organizations, to contribute to the training and the mobility of these people. To speak about this, we will have in fact, 6 great speakers. I will moderate the first part of the session with 3 of them, and then Arturo from Enabel will moderate the second part of the session. In the first part of the session, we will have Lucille Urin from the Union International for Metallurgists and Trades, Jason Gagnon from OECD, and Pablo Acosta for World Bank. In the sake of time, I will give them the floor to them to start their interventions. Each of them will have 7 minutes to make it. So thank you very much for joining. And Lucille, you can start. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having me today. First of all, I would like to mention that the green transition coupled with the digital transition are probably the main profound and quickest changes that industry has to experience in living memory. It changes the way we consume, the way we live, so it has a very big impact on our companies. Our members are at the forefront for search to find new solutions and also to try to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions and also to create new products that are adapted to the new needs of the society. In order to try to understand what is the impact of this the green transition, we conducted a study through our Industrial Skills Observatory, which is a joint body. So it means that it's managed by trade unions and employers organization. It gathers 32 different sectors together. And we conducted a study to try to assess what is the impact of the green transition on jobs. And the first question is that everybody is talking about green transition, but what is the real impact for companies of the green transition? This study shows that 6 main challenges have been noticed for companies. The first one is the energy consumption, raw material consumption, decarbonization of production, waste management, air quality, and soil and water pollution. Raw materials and consumption of energy were not a surprise because it has been very difficult for companies in recent years because of the war, because of the COVID crisis and everything. So it has been difficult for companies. But what we noticed is that a lot of companies that participated to this study mentioned the difficulty they have, the question they have with waste management. A lot of companies, from SMEs to larger companies, are increasingly talking about eco-conception, biosourced materials, the other way to work with suppliers. So we feel that it's a very important topic for members. Then what is the impact of this green transition on the labor market? First of all, the study shows that fundamental skills that are required for industrial occupations will remain. So, for example, for maintenance, manufacturing, the fundamental skills will still be necessary and required. And also, what also the study shows is that we don't foresee a big wave of new occupations at cross-industry level. So in some companies, some new occupation could appear, but we don't expect a big phenomena of creation of new occupations. But what the study shows is that additional skills will be necessary for most of the jobs. So it will be, for the most striking examples are purchasing department, in engineering and research and development. New skills will be necessary for this kind of professions. The most important example is probably engineering, because engineers, on top of new technical skills, will need new cross-disciplinary skills, such as teaching skills, or to be able to manage some controversies regarding green transition or regarding technical difficulties. They will also have to gain some skills as regards eco-conception, energy savings. So this point is very crucial for us. And this point is also true for other professions. For maintenance, for example, it will be important for workers to have also skills as regard energy consumption and everything. And also the point I mentioned at the beginning is the waste management. So a lot of occupation will need to have new skills as regard eco-conception. Also the analysis of the supply chain will be also really important. So this is what we noticed in this study. We know that it's difficult for companies, or maybe most for SMEs, to deal with this green transition, and also to upskill, reskills, and attract talent, because as you may know, in our sector, we have difficulties, we are facing labor shortages. So as UEMM, as employers organization of the metal industry, we try to help our members to adapt to this transition. We provide them with training. We have training centers. And also at our sector, we are going to have a negotiation at sectoral level okay, on this topic. And so we are also conducting our own study as regard metal industry. So it's an important topic for us. And as we always say, is that to try to attract people is with communication campaign is one of the solutions, but migration can also be a solution for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fabio, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jason Gagnon. I'm head of unit at the OECD Development Center on migration and skills. Extremely thrilled to be on this panel with such distinguished people. The topic of future of work and the future of employment is really at the core of what we do at the OECD Development Center, not just on migration, but on the future of transitions, green transitions, and digital transitions. And on migration, we've been working on this topic. We'll be releasing three papers that shed some light on a pretty vast array of topics. One of them is human mobility and the future of work within Africa, the future of work and the mobility between GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council countries, and Africa, and then one on skills mobility partnerships and the impact of development on countries of origin. And I'd like to focus on the last point for a very quick 7 minutes. As Fabio correctly and already went over in his introduction, as innovation and demographic and technological change take firm grip of global economic foundations, the future of employment is obviously on fluid ground. Nothing here is static. It's just that we need to adapt skills towards that change. And at the heart of all this change are obviously the skills and the accumulated knowledge that are brought by individual workers. And in many parts of the world, as the numbers showed earlier, the gaps and the shortages are very tangible. Just to cite some of the numbers that were somewhat already cited, by 2030, there'll be a global human talent shortage of 85 million people, 7 million will be in the green economy. 71% of employers have already reported difficulties in finding job posts in energy and utility companies. In the GCC countries in particular, a survey of workers, and this is to show that it's perceptions of employees as well. They found that 57% of respondents of job seekers thought that green skills were the most important skills. But the main point of the work we're doing is that the need for skills is not limited to high-income countries, and the need for skilled workers across all sorts of skills, but particularly the green skills groups, is widespread in Africa, including things like equipment testing, software engineering. The energy sector technicians are essential across different countries in Africa. A recent survey found that 4 to 5 African firms in the previous skills found difficulty in filling specific tech skills. The priority skills list, if you look at some specific countries like Botswana, Eswatini, and South Africa, place technical skills in manufacturing, mining, and logistics occupations as critically needed. And then there's a very small number of graduates that produce a significant gap in scientific professions in Africa. Only 4 to 12% of degrees are completed in the region are STEM related, and less than a quarter of the students graduating in higher education in Africa are studying in some STEM subjects. So there's obviously a lot of work that still could be done for this adaptation that I was mentioning earlier. And this is why it's probably not surprising to see a rise in interest in the new initiatives around creating safe, regular, and creating safe and regular pathways for specific skills, particularly this issue of skills mobility partnerships. And to uncover this, work with Elena, who's across the room from me, we've looked at 56 specific skills mobility partnership schemes, very broad definition-based of skills mobility schemes, and decompose them by the aspects in which they're built, the partnerships that build them, the data that are required, the developmental impact on the countries of origin. And on that final point, I'd like just to emphasize the work that we've done here. On development, we stuck to the following metrics. We looked at the impact of emigration, so departure. We looked at remittances. We looked at diasporic engagement. We looked at return and reintegration. And we also, at the end, looked at whether there was any attempt to connect this to larger national development plans and strategies. And that was the most crucial element for us that we were looking at. And very quickly, what we found was that on the impact of emigration, so the impact of departure, labor market assessments, for instance, when people leave, a large number of skills mobility partnerships do indeed integrate that into their programs. But where there's a gap, where there's a lack, is on the rest of these metrics that I mentioned earlier. So on remittances and specifically on financial inclusion, only 9% of partnerships account for this. On diasporic engagement, it's also 9%. On return and reintegration, it was a little better. More than half of the skills mobility partnerships integrated that aspect. And then finally, on the general capacity building in the country of origin, so trying to connect this with training in the countries of origin, we found, again, another gap. So 36% on capacity building, 14% on countries of origin, but crucially, and this is my last point, the link with national development strategies, and the link with green skills transition was particularly lacking in almost all the mobility partnerships we found. Only 9% of schemes accounted for connecting the scheme with some sort of forward-looking, future-looking strategical aspects of the country of origin, and where they were going on green skills, on geographic, on regional trends, on the future of work, and generally on their sectoral and national development plans. So the paper will be available soon. We'll make it available to everybody on the list. And with these words, I'd like to thank you again and give the word back to Fabio.
Thank you very much, Jason. That was perfect on time. To conclude this part of the session, Pablo Acosta, welcome back.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Pablo Acosta. I'm Global Lead for Migration at the World Bank. And again, here we're going to be talking of similar concepts, of course. We're going to be talking about global skills partnership now in a second, which is a concept that actually we borrow from the Center for Global Development folks that are sitting here as well. But of course, we acknowledge that other institutions, IOM, for instance, talk about skill mobility pathways that are similar in a sense. Basically, and there will be many numbers that you will hear about that, depending on which methodology they use. Basically, what we know is that there will be a lot of jobs needed for the green economy, and these jobs need to come from somewhere. So depending on which methodology you use, of course, if you count into the workers needed for constructing, for maintaining, for operating new technologies related to the green economy, or also including solar panel construction, and including as well also retrofitting existing facilities. Some estimates have gone all the way to 55 million new jobs that will be needed in the economy, especially if the objective is to achieve global net zero emission, which is a huge number. This is study from Stanford. In any case, the main message here is that these workers cannot be just coming from developed countries that are taking some of the initial actions, in adapting. These countries are facing huge demographic decline and already, facing labor shortages in many sectors. So this is not going to be coming. They're not going to be coming. They cannot be coming just from the existing workforce that these countries have. They will have to come from countries where they have still a demographic bonus. Many of the developing countries, and especially countries like in Africa, where 35% of the youngsters are going to be by 2050 around the world. What is the problem with these countries? That the skill development challenges. Basically, these people will need to be trained, and we need to accompany that process as well. So one of the potential of the Global Skills Partnership is that it has certain features compared to other mobility pathway, is that it has focused on training at home. And this is critical, not only because for economic reasons that maybe cheaper and efficient to train before these people can go to destination, but at the same time can have also additional benefits. Many of these workers will stay home, and these are countries that are expected to increase energy consumption in the future and going to be hard to adapt. So by training the local force, we are also generating spillovers in the economies that are of origin of these migrants. At the same time, there is the opportunity that many of these countries are the ones who are facing the hardest hits of the climate change, and there will be a lot of displaced people that will need new occupations. So the opportunity to skill them is there. Now, a Global Skill Partnership then has a nice, interesting feature that basically seeking for win-win outcomes for everybody involved, for destination, for origin, and for the migrants themselves. Of course, they require, different things to put in place, including, of course, the right training content to be developed, the right standards, the legal pathways in place. Many of these schemes, sometimes we focus a lot on training a worker, but if the legal pathways are not in place, the visas are not there, or the facility to move people quickly, they can fail. But the advantage is that we are learning already on many of the initial pilots. The Global Skill Partnerships are not new; they have been already there across many sectors since at least 10 years. Here are 3 examples of those who are most cited and looked at in the literature. Some of them from our colleagues, of course, from Enabel here as well, promoting basically across different corridors and sectors, sectors related to ICT, construction, auto repair, hospitality. And the question is, we haven't yet put in place a Global Skills Partnership for the green economy per se, or there are already initiatives, but we can already learn from these experiences. And maybe you want the next slide is basically among the lessons that we are distilling, and this is coming actually. I'm going to do publicity. There will be a new report from the World Bank on Global Skills Partnership that we hope to synthesize the lessons, and again trying to put in place as well recommendations for the sectors that have more promise. Clearly, what we need is to have, as I mentioned before, a legal pathway very clear, the visa categories and the political buy-in in place. Despite the demographic transition is a phenomenon that is not, we're not gonna can dispute at this point. There is still a lot of resistance, as you know, and politicize the question of admitting migrants, even in sectors where the private sector is very clear that they need workers. Of course, we need successful partnerships, and this includes institutional coordination at many levels, from public employment services, from training providers, from industry associations. All these need to be part of the chain, and they need both origin and destination as well, and contribute to improve the capacity of each other. The involvement of the private sector has also been very key for successful Global Skills Partnership, because they're the ones that can contribute not only with training and standards that will help at the end of the day ratify that these workers have the skills needed, but at the same time, very importantly, they have to contribute as well, ideally, with the financing. That's the 4th point, the sustainable financing, that is going to be a topic that we hear a lot in the GFMD. We need to find innovative solutions as well to how to scale these interventions from pilot stage to larger coverage in sectors and in terms of people being in this Global Skills Partnership. And we need to discuss specifically who's going to finance that. Clearly, the origin countries cannot do by themselves. And there is a role, of course, for private sector, from destination governments, and of course, international financial institutions or MDBs like us at the World Bank. Thank you very much, and over to you, Fabio.
That was great, Pablo. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good speaker. For making the intervention sometime, but also for highlighting, I think, three critical issues. The importance of data, as Lucy was mentioning. All the co-organizers here produce a lot of data on these topics, so this is critical. The importance of a whole of government approach, going beyond immigration institutions and agencies to also incorporate the ministries of education, the ministries of planning, the statistics office. All of these actors are critical at the central, but also at the local level. And finally, obviously, a whole of society approach, having the private sector playing a critical role. Now, I'm more than happy to hand over to Arturo to facilitate the second part of the session. Arturo.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentations. Very interesting. And I think the two panels are very complementary. That's why this discussion is and will be very rich. I think Jason and Pebbo's presentations really resonate also with Enabel, the Belgian Development Agency's priorities and strategies and implementations on labor mobility, which is, of course, one of the priorities. And this implies to, of course, work with a very broad range of actors, international actors, local actors, private sector, public sector, diaspora organizations. And this is why we try to have a very diverse panel here, also with Salvatore Petronella first, from labor partnerships, labor mobility partnerships, l'AMP, a think tank of migration specialists. Then we will have Ninon Duval, director of Bondi Neuve, which is an accelerator and program operator for innovation entrepreneurship in Europe and Africa. And then online, Salima Ben Salem from ANAPEC, the Moroccan National Agency for Employment, who will give her speech in French, but we can make a brief wrap up in English if needed afterwards. So Salvatore, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arturo. Thank you for the organizers for having a LAMP or Labor Mobility Partnership at this panel. It's a tremendous honor to be here. And thank you for the previous speakers also ready to have unfold some of the elements I'd like to point at. What I'm going to share is basically based on our experience in the field as pragmatic doers, as we like to define ourselves. Basically, we try to translate what is on policy papers into concrete practices. And by creating practices which becomes credible to the audience, and by audience I mean multiple ways, or different audiences, governments, private sector, migrant workers themselves, we have the vision to build the sustainable policies which are grounded in practices. So I'm probably gonna split my few minutes looking at three elements of the title of my presentation, which is international collaboration, then we have skills and talent, and how to accelerate. International collaborations are how can I say, are the element that can build those partnerships, and we focus a lot on that. We try to build a multi-sector approach and stakeholder approach, and we try to look at incentives, what makes it interesting and what makes it worth for specific audiences to be part of certain discussions. And we have to adapt also the way we enter certain discussion, the way we play with the narrative, and the way we talk about different things. Sometimes, just to give an example, the word migration doesn't even appear in any paper we share with different stakeholders, because it may be a topic out of discussion, so we can freeze some conversations, or it's actually not what we're looking at. Sometimes we just talk about development. Just to say, I mean, our stand is that migration is development, is the best development tool that we can have in this field. So we see a momentum now that brings together different stakeholders, different member states of the international community that are pushing more and more for labor mobility. So we think that it's a great opportunity to focus more on that. We see narratives which are adapting also to embrace this sense of a more global mobility and more skilled workers coming to our economies for other contextual factors, which again have not much to do with migration, but we're talking about demographic aging, or shortages in different sectors. So migration can be the solution, and that's why we try to influence those collaboration with this kind of narrative. This tend to work. It works also with mostly with governments which are not so prone to talk about migration, because all they want to show is that controlled migration is a solution. So that can be also a different way to go about certain narratives. When we talk about skills and talents, if you are, we can apply this to green transition, or we can apply this to different sectors, but if you are a highly qualified profile, normally accessing visa, accessing a pathway, getting a job is not that big of an issue. You can find solutions. But if you are part of our focus, the core skills, the one that they have no qualification, they have no bachelor degree, so they have informal skills acquired through tremendous years of opportunities, but they don't have the recognition valid in specific countries. So they have to face the highest hurdles to get into the jobs. So when we talk about skills and talents, we also have to make sure that those outside of the pictures are actually the large number we're talking about. And if we look at those numbers that have been given before by World Bank, OECD, we're talking about millions of people, and many of them will be probably on the core skill side. So those below the bachelor degree, I would say. To do that, of course, we need to create a more standardized approach to recognizing skills, and we're trying to do that. We have an ongoing project, which is sort of a visa screening, which brings all together the credential that every state will have to look at, whether, you know, to see whether a candidate is suitable for the job, including assessing the informal skills they may have. So those are kind of solutions that we're trying to test and then to replicate. But how to accelerate? That's where the challenge comes in. We've seen on different slides, I don't have to repeat that, but we're talking about millions of people. At the moment, the uptake of the programs, be it skills mobility partnership or global skills partnerships, is still in the number of hundreds, probably. We're not going to meet those targets unless we exponentially expand the uptake of visa to fill the vacancies that we have. We have also moved past the concept of labor shortages in our work. We're talking just more about labor scarcity. Creating a solution to cover a shortage in a specific sector may just represent creating a shortage somewhere else. So we just have to accept and do something about the idea that we just don't have enough workers in a demographic aging society, mostly in the OECD countries. But by doing this, we also have to prepare the sending countries in a better way. So the skills, the access to skills and access to training and access to standardized qualification should be much wider. One element I like to echo also from the World Bank, it's access to finance. Many of the barriers of core skilled workers, including the green transition, of course, it's the access to training, it's the access to visa, but it's also access to acquire specific skills. Me, for instance, think about languages. Having a training into language skills to reach the levels that certain countries, certain economies are requiring, it takes time and takes budgets from their own pockets sometimes. We can create, and that's what we're trying to do, for instance, in a pilot between Germany and India, financial solutions to make access to language training much more viable, much more suitable for migrant workers. This is one of the solutions. We are building a GSP model, just to mention one of the models we're working on, of course, between Spain and Colombia in another sector, which can be also replicated to the green transition, to the green economy, where we are also embedding a financial solution to make the pilot sustainable over time. The idea is that, of course, there's a need, and the international community is ready to do that for start-up capital, let's say, to kick off the pilot. But the very challenge is to make it sustainable over time, to go beyond the hundreds of people being moved in the first cycle and go into thousands or millions. My last point is that this can only be possible if we build a labor mobility industry globally. I mean, we're talking about moving people from borders to borders. We know what are the challenges. We know what are the obstacles. But at the end, we need to create the system that sustains this movement of millions of people globally on a yearly basis. And we're not there yet. We have to be honest, we're not there yet. There's a lot of initiatives running in parallel, sometimes replicating activities. There's a lot of potential learning to do there, but the main risk that we see is that if we don't create the fundamental structure to creating a labor mobility industry, an industry of people that move people basically across borders in an orderly way and in large volume of numbers. We're not there yet, and I hope those discussions can lead to some to more elements and to more discussions going in that way. So that's what we try to advocate also in fora like global Forum on Migration Development and other constituencies. So I hope I stick on time. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me today here. I'm very honored to be part of this panel with prestigious speakers. It's the first time I'm here at the summit, so very, very happy to be here with you. I'm Ninon Duval, so I'm director of Bondinov. I'm sure everyone knows here what is Bondinov, but even so, I will explain what Bondinov is. And then I will explain also what kind of programs we run at Bondinov. And I will focus on a specific program, the most recent one we have worked with Enabel, which is a PEMWECHO. So Bondinov is a non-profit organization which is specialized on entrepreneurship. We help entrepreneurs to develop their startups, and especially innovative entrepreneurs. So green transition is one of our focus since the beginning. 10 years ago, we developed Bondinov, and more specifically, entrepreneurs, innovation, but also internationalizations of the startups, and mainly between France and countries in Africa. We began as an accelerator in France to help entrepreneurs to develop their projects with Africa. And we had a lot of impressive startups and concepts from African diaspora living in France and who wanted to develop new concepts and new activities with countries in Africa. And then we also developed partnerships with incubators to help our entrepreneurs to develop their projects with Africa and in countries in Africa. They had to join other incubators. So we had developed a network of incubators called Afrikinov, with now about 140 African incubators, which are part of this network. So from startups to between France to Africa, we have developed other links to help ecosystems, entrepreneurship ecosystems in Europe and in Africa and between both continents. So we have developed different programs in all these subjects. The different programs we had in mobility, I want to explain some of them. We've run Meet Africa with Expertise France. Meet Africa is a program that helps African diaspora, which are located in Europe or in Africa, to develop a project and startups in their country. So let's say, for instance, in Ivory Coast, entrepreneurs which are based in Europe or in Africa and who want to develop startups in Ivory Coast and to develop employment in Ivory Coast. We helped them to develop their enterprise, their concepts, to focus on the difficulties that can be seen to develop a company between different countries and to encourage them to settle their enterprise in Ivory Coast. We also had programs in knowledge development of knowledge with the Institute of Research for Development. For instance, the Trophée de l'Innovation that help searchers to develop partnerships in knowledge between different countries and especially between African countries, new concepts based on an innovation. We also worked on programs like soft landing or learning expedition. I don't know if you are familiar with this type of programs, which encourage to conquer new markets. So let's say Senegalese entrepreneurs who want to develop his enterprise in another country in Africa or in Europe. So soft landing, learning expedition will help him to understand the opportunity of a market, the difficulties to develop new partnerships, meet new people. So soft landing and learning expeditions are also a kind of program we develop with the, for instance, within the Enrich in Africa program, a European program. And the last one is the PEM Wet Show program that we have developed with Enabel. So PEM Wet Show is a program for entrepreneurship mobility that is based on a new concept which is called circular mobility. And circular mobility, I would say it's a way to see mobility in the very positive way, to develop new knowledge, new partnerships between two countries. So PEM Wet Show has been tested between Senegal and Belgium. I just wanted to quote Dubélé in French, if you can allow me. Dubélé said, heureux qui comme Ulysse a fait un beau voyage et puis est revenu plein d'usages et raisons, vivre le reste de son temps avec ses parents. Alors je le dis mal parce que je suis un peu impressionnée par vous, mais ce concept de circular mobility is not very new because in the 16th century it was already a way to say, well, it's very important to develop partnerships with other countries, to see in the different countries, what are the knowledge, what are all the cultures, and then you come back in your own country with more knowledge, with more partners and stronger. So that is what is PEM Wet Show, a Dubélé program reorganized with Enabel team. And with PEM Wet Show, so we encourage at Pondinov Senegalese entrepreneurs to develop partnerships with Belgian enterprises. We had 400 candidates at the very beginning. We selected about 50 enterprises, 47 exactly. We helped them during a program for 15 months with coaches, trainers, Belgian coaches, and Senegalese trainers, so a team very mixed between the both countries. And at the end of the program, we are very proud to say that this program allowed to sign more than 67 partnerships for these enterprises between them and Belgian enterprises. So that is a very great success. And it helped. I think it will help for a long time to develop this kind of partnership that help both enterprises in Belgium and in Senegal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ninon. So maybe before handing the floor to our last speaker, Salima, just highlighting that these concrete initiatives allow us to test this global skills partnerships approach. This is which also allow us to identify specific needs in specific countries, needs in training, needs in professional insertion. And the idea is really to create, of course, mobility schemes for workers, for entrepreneurs, to support them in developing the skills, including, of course, the green skills. So these concrete initiatives, they just show how development actors are key in this matter, and more concrete initiatives are going to be showcased by Salima Ben Salem. Je vous donne la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Je vous remercie pour cette invitation. Je ne sais pas si je peux partager mon écran ou bon, je vais faire ça directement. Je peux partager mon écran? Je peux avoir l'accord pour ça?
Oui, sans souci.
Ok, je n'ai pas l'autorisation pour ça, donc sinon on fait ça, il n'y a pas de souci.
On va vous la donner au plus vite.
Merci.
In the meantime, we'll fix this technical thing. Just to confirm that we will have, after Salima, a Q&A session moderated by Helen from CD. Hopefully you can stay for that part too.
And then, of course, closing remarks by our special envoy for migration, Ambassador Hugo Verbist, who represents the Belgian delegation here. Ok, vous pouvez essayer, Salima?
Oui, tout de suite. Pardon hein, pour ce petit
dérangement. Non, c'est rien.
Ah, toujours pas. Écoutez, c'est pas grave, on va faire ça, hein, donc pour ne pas retarder davantage l'intervention.
Ok, on va y aller.
On y va?
Oui, merci.
Ok. Bon, ben écoutez, merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. Donc, je m'excuse de ne pas faire la présentation en anglais. Donc, je vais peut-être faire l'exception aujourd'hui. Alors, je remercie les organisateurs de cet important événement pour nous avoir donné cette opportunité de partager nos expériences en matière de mobilité professionnelle internationale et comment cette mobilité peut répondre à des pénuries de travailleurs ou de pénuries de compétences qui peuvent se présenter dans les pays à la fois d'origine et à la fois dans les pays de destination. Donc, ce sont des approches qui pourraient être adoptées pour répondre à cette demande de travailleurs qualifiés qui sont nécessaires justement à cette transition écologique. Donc, la transition écologique et les questions environnementales concernent à la fois les pays du Nord et les pays du Sud et créent des besoins en ressources humaines qualifiées de part et d'autre. Alors, dans les pays du Nord s'ajoute également la problématique de la population, la problématique démographique avec une population vieillissante, également un désintérêt pour un certain nombre de métiers nécessaires à cette transition écologique. Au Sud, le problème démographique ne se pose pas de la même manière. Les ressources humaines peuvent être disponibles, mais nécessitent une qualification pour certaines d'entre elles dans le domaine ou une requalification pour répondre justement à des besoins des économies de ces pays du Sud et pourquoi pas répondre aussi aux besoins des secteurs qui ont besoin de ces travailleurs qualifiés dans les pays du Nord à travers des approches ou des schémas de mobilité concertés. Alors, même si la migration pose aujourd'hui, a toujours posé d'ailleurs, mais pose souvent des problèmes et des défis aux pays d'origine comme aux pays de destination, elle contribue donc positivement du point de vue développement économique des pays d'origine et de destination à travers notamment le transfert de de ce savoir-faire, en plus évidemment des investissements qui sont liés à ce mouvement des travailleurs. Alors, dans un contexte aujourd'hui de globalisation extrême, on constate que les travailleurs s'internationalisent également énormément, de plus en plus. Ils sont attirés ailleurs par des salaires qui sont peut-être plus élevés, d'autres opportunités de carrière professionnelle. Et ces mouvements nord-sud, mais également sud-sud, ont des impacts et posent de véritables défis, surtout pour les pays d'origine. Par ailleurs, la digitalisation aujourd'hui à laquelle nous assistons des processus de recrutement et des procédures d'introduction ont également grandement facilité l'expatriation des personnes qualifiées. Alors, face à ces profondes transformations, le Maroc, comme un certain nombre de pays du Sud, subit également la pression de cet environnement international. Aujourd'hui, c'est le certificat de compétence qui est devenu le passeport des travailleurs en mouvement et une compétence d'ailleurs acquise dans la majorité des cas dans les pays d'origine. Alors, plusieurs pays ont ainsi revu leurs procédures d'introduction afin de faciliter ce recrutement de compétences à partir de l'étranger à travers un sourcing qui est, dans la majeure partie des cas, un sourcing direct. Et dans certains pays, notamment au Maroc, pour citer notre pays, la migration de main-d'œuvre qualifiée a aujourd'hui un impact négatif sur certains secteurs essentiels tels que la santé, l'IT et bientôt certainement l'environnement et les métiers qui sont liés à l'environnement. Donc ce phénomène doit être estimé, donc il nécessite évidemment un certain nombre d'analyses de données de part et d'autre pour en évaluer l'impact et mettre en place justement les actions correctives. Alors, toutefois, nous pensons que la migration aux fins de travail ne doit plus être vue, malgré tout cela, uniquement sous l'angle de la fuite des compétences, mais également comme une opportunité, avec plutôt l'implication des pays d'accueil dans la formation linguistique et technique des ressources humaines dans les pays d'origine, à la lumière de toutes les leçons que nous avons apprises dans la mise en œuvre d'un certain nombre de schémas de mobilité entre le Maroc et des pays tels que la Belgique et l'Allemagne. Des approches conjointes entre gouvernements au niveau bilatéral, ainsi qu'entre secteur public et secteur privé devraient être favorisées et mises en place dans ce sens. Pardon. Cette migration légale, sûre, ordonnée, en plus concertée, j'ajouterai le terme concerté, entre les milieux productifs des deux pays, permettrait de doter à la fois les économies des pays du Nord d'une main-d'œuvre qualifiée, sans léser les économies des pays du Sud. Donc un partenariat, on parlerait du coup d'un partenariat quadruple gagnant pour le candidat, pour l'employeur, pour le pays de destination et le pays d'accueil. Alors, les projets de coopération auxquels nous avons pris part, notamment le programme TAM, ont permis d'explorer de nouvelles approches en matière de recrutement qui sont basées sur justement ce partenariat gagnant-gagnant. Et c'est le cas du Global Skills Partnership qui a été mis en œuvre entre la Belgique et le Maroc dans le cadre du programme TAM, avec l'assistance technique et l'appui de Enabel. Ces approches pourraient permettre de répondre à la demande croissante de travailleurs qualifiés nécessaire à la transition écologique, à la fois dans le pays de destination et d'origine. Alors, en quoi cette approche consiste-t-elle, même si des éléments ont été apportés dans un certain nombre de présentations qui ont été faites avant la mienne? Tout d'abord, il s'agit de partager les informations sur la pénurie et les besoins entre les acteurs des pays d'origine et de destination de ces travailleurs. Donc, une identification conjointe des métiers en pénurie dans les deux pays. Une implication des employeurs et des recruteurs dans les deux pays, donc à travers la définition des profils d'entrée et de sortie. L'identification également des compétences à améliorer à travers un comparatif des curricula et des programmes de formation impliquant ce comparatif ou cette comparaison des curricula impliquerait notamment les opérateurs de formation. La mise en place d'une formation linguistique et ou technique dans le pays d'origine, ce qui contribue également à renforcer les capacités de formation en pays d'origine. La sélection des candidats dans le pays d'origine, évidemment. L'implication, ça c'est un élément important, des services publics de l'emploi de part et d'autre, en tant que vis-à-vis à la fois des candidats dans le pays d'origine et des employeurs dans le pays de destination. Une bonne compréhension des procédures d'introduction, puisque si l'introduction est facilitée, comprise également, ça contribue à la réussite de ces schémas de mobilité. Une bonne préparation des candidats à la vie et au travail dans le pays d'accueil et la mise en place de dispositifs d'accompagnement sur place. Et puis évidemment, une recherche permanente et une analyse permanente du processus de manière à introduire de manière continue, de façon continue, des améliorations au processus. Donc, on a pu développer un certain nombre d'approches montrant qu'il n'y a pas un seul schéma de mobilité, mais plusieurs, puisqu'à côté des schémas qui ont été développés avec Enabel, il y a également d'autres approches qui ont été mises en œuvre avec notamment l'Allemagne et la GIZ et le service public de l'emploi allemand, où la formation, du coup, était prise en charge par le pays de destination à travers le recrutement d'apprentis qui étaient placés en formation professionnelle dans les instituts de formation professionnelle allemands. La formation, elle, linguistique, était faite du coup en pays d'origine. Donc les candidats avaient déjà la maîtrise de la langue avant de se déplacer en Allemagne pour intégrer les établissements de formation. Voilà. Donc évidemment, il y avait tout un échange concernant le profil et ça concerne évidemment les métiers en tension qui ont été identifiés sur le marché de l'emploi allemand. Voilà. Donc, je pense que pour finir mon propos, la réussite de ces schémas repose sur un certain nombre de facteurs clés, notamment tout ce qui est partenariat public-privé, l'implication des services publics d'emploi, une bonne connaissance des marchés de part et d'autre, un partage des coûts aussi. Donc, il est important, puisque c'est pour pérenniser ce genre d'approche, et comme l'a dit la personne qui a intervenu avant moi lors du premier panel, il y a cette question de coût qui est là. Donc, le coût, qui va assurer le coût? C'est mon dernier. C'est ma dernière phrase. Donc, il faut travailler sur la pérennisation de ces approches et il s'agit notamment de trouver les modalités de financement appropriées à de telles approches. Et je termine ainsi mon propos. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Salima. Thank you so much. I will very briefly maybe summarize in English. Of course, Salima highlighted the need to respond to shortages in countries of origin and of destinations, labor shortages. This is, of course, linked with the ecological transition and the need of specific needs and qualified human resources, which can be a challenge in countries of origin and destination. Of course, she highlighted the fact that Morocco might suffer from globalization and the skills recruitment, including the digital recruitment, but she also underlined the opportunity that labor migration is and must be. At last, she of course highlighted also concrete mobility schemes between Belgium and Morocco, focusing on training. And I will maybe finish by saying that might respond to some calls for action that we also heard with our previous panelists. And these are very good food for thought, and we'll be happy to continue discussion with the Q&A, I guess. And the CGD will do the Q&A, please.
Thank you very much, Arturo, and thank you to everyone for staying in, sticking to it, especially if you didn't manage to get to lunch. My name is Helen Dempster. I'm the Deputy Director for Migration and Displacement Policy at the Centre for Global Development. And it sounds like everyone else here, we've also published a new report this morning on this topic. It covers 10 countries, and in summation, it finds that all of these countries, Global North and Global South, will be unable to meet their green transition goals without rapidly expanding both training and migration. So we have a 2-page summary here. I'd be happy to discuss the paper after this event, but more importantly, we need to get to Q&A, and we only have about 10 minutes. So I'd like to start by taking 3 questions from people here in the audience. Please do raise your hand and start your question by mentioning your name. Please keep your question short and make sure it's an actual question. I don't want statements, I want questions. Always start with the women, so you at the back there, please.
You can use the mic.
Thank you, and thank you to the panel. My name is Leona Shannon, and I am with the U.S. Department of Labor. When we think about green jobs and labor migration, we're looking through the lens of the worker, and therefore see this space in terms of just transition, including access to decent work, safe and healthy work environment, freedom of association, collective bargaining, fair and ethical recruitment. And I'm wondering if the panelists could speak to how they see opportunities for just transition, as well as some of these areas of just transition that I mentioned in their work in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana. Second question.
Hey, everybody. Kamala Sahed from USAID. Two questions, if I may. One is, I guess, to Jason. I was really surprised that, given the formal role of governments in the design of SNPs, at least one state, that development considerations were, very limited. And so my first question is, why? And then 2, are there models out there in the existing pool where development considerations were more central? And then my second question is, given what's been said by a lot of panelists about how limited the scale of some of these SNPs have been, why do you think it's scalable, right? If we're talking hundreds or thousands, as compared to, millions of people who move through more traditional labor migration programs, why do we think there's scale here to be found?
Thank you, Kamal. Last question for this round. Yes, sir.
Thanks very much. I'm Andrew Rose from the Australian Department of Home Affairs. We heard in the opening session that there are over 110 million displaced people in the world, and that number is growing courtesy of climate change. And we've heard in this side event that there are millions of jobs needed for the green transition. Is there a solution to meeting the jobs that are needed for the green transition that also addresses the situation of those who are in displacement and moves them to a durable solution? Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Over to the panel to answer that round. Jason, do you want to kick off?
Thanks, Ellen, because I need to leave as well. I'm going to answer directly to the representative from USAID. I think it's a really interesting question, and it's obviously it's flagrant in our findings that the linkages with development are under resourced and they're under emphasized. One example that I think I can pull out, because you asked me about an example, it's a partnership that's being still developed, is between the UAE and Egypt, in which the returns to, so it's Egyptians going to work in the UAE on hydroponic agriculture, and the program is really based on developing that sector in Egypt in the future. And that for me, it's run obviously by colleagues or it's partly run by colleagues in IOM in Cairo. That for me is a really good example of future forward-looking development of the country of origin in mind, while filling the needs of the the country of destination. But ultimately, I mean, you asked me why. I think there's a lot of emphasis on the migrant. I mean, just to go back a little bit to the initial question as well, there's a lot of emphasis on the migrant, and the focus on developing and upskilling on the migrant isn't necessarily going to lead to development in the country of origin. And I think right now the skills mobility partnerships are focused on the migrant and focused on the country of destination, without necessarily thinking how those two things can then link up also with spillovers once they return, or once they're part of a diaspora, or when they're a part of the diaspora, how do they invest back home? I mean, obviously there's some big advantages to doing that, but they're secondary right now, if anything.
If I want to add about the scalability, I think what is needed is political will and to overcome the barriers, artificial barriers that are created by rhetoric, especially. There are global skill partnerships at the scale. An example is in sports, football academies, baseball academies. They exist. They go to countries, developing countries in Africa, in Latin America, to create these academies, to prepare talent, identify talent, and then bring them to destinations. So why not? It cannot happen in these other sectors, in these other industries. It's a matter of sometimes also to let the private sector, because clearly at the end of the day, the private sector is the one recruiting and is the one who's going to be pressing for more scale and possibilities. So if we can allow the private sector, especially to do that and partner with them, I think the potential for scalability is there. So I feel it's a matter of articulating the solution. I wanted to answer also to Andrew's question on the refugees. Definitely, this is a huge and tough potential, and we talk about we want to move refugees from self-reliance, no, and to give them the opportunity to be integrated in the labor market. Many of them may already possess the skills, and they don't have the certification, so there is need to be help on that front. Also to connect to potential in the countries that are being host today or third countries. The World Bank, for instance, is partnering in an evaluation of a program like this with talent beyond partnerships, that are beyond boundaries, sorry, that basically that is one of the focus, not focusing on how to integrate refugees even in certain countries. So yeah, I agree that's another way to create opportunities for new green jobs.
And I can jump briefly on the Department of Labor question. Thank you very much for that question. My name is Fabio. I'm the head of labor mobility markets in IOM. So in our SMP approach, we insist that one of the core elements is addressing social aspects of employment and mobility. It's not just about the hard skills training. It's not just about finding the right mobility pathways. It's also about taking into consideration gender aspects, for example, social aspects. Is this worker in need for other resources and skills beyond what is needed for the job? So according to our model, we need this comprehensive approach in order to facilitate this. And probably connected to the question by Andrew regarding how to connect displaced populations, the refugee, people under protection to this. I think this is also the opportunity for SMPs to go beyond a traditional approach to labor mobility pathways only, and to connect more in a horizontal approach, education pathways, protection pathways with employment pathways. So maybe if we can connect all these three type of pathways in a more horizontal approach, we can make these SMPs more effective to also incorporate these targeted populations. Over. I don't know if we have more questions from.
So we do have a few more questions in the room and online, but I'm wary of time, and I know people will need to run to the next set of sessions. So what I suggest is that we pass on now to the ambassador for his closing remarks. And if people have time after the session, please do feel free to stay, and I'm sure the panel will be glad to chat. To all of those who've asked questions online, thank you very much. We will endeavour to get back to you online and answer those questions as well. So thank you, Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you. I have a bit of a cold, so bear with me. And I will also be very short, but I would like to first of all thank the organizers, IOM and Enabel, for this extremely interesting side event, and we could go on for much longer. If I would have to say three things that I
take from this debate today. I think, first of all, that it gave us a good reminder of the importance of multi-level and multi-stakeholder skills partnerships when dealing with the green transition and the challenges to developing the skills necessary for this transition. As we have heard, there are a lot of risks involved of taking away workers from countries that they need themselves for their transition, but there are also a lot of opportunities. So this multi-level and multi-stakeholder skills partnerships are essential. Second of all, as I said, we have to find an approach which benefits all the parties concerned, the countries of destination and of origin, their ecosystems and the individuals, of course, which we are talking about in the spirit of the SDGs. And third of all, I think that some projects have shown that labor mobility can really be a catalyst of development. And I think also Belgium is very committed to that. Belgium has this 6 months the chairmanship of the Council presidency of the EU, and skills mobility will also be very much on the agenda during our presidency and during the meetings of the Working Party of the External Dimension of Migration. But also our development agency Enabel, which has been co-organizing this event together with RM, have shown with the implementation of some concrete initiatives of skill development aligned with the strategies of the relevant partners involved, that things are really possible, and that's entrepreneur mobility and circular mobility is probably the way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all of you joining in person and online. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening.